Crime Files of Los Angeles podcast. A little different than most of the true crime podcasts. Here, I take a case out of the file cabinet, one that I worked on, and I review the facts of it. I look over the investigation, what went into it, how did the detectives track down the suspect. And then I go into the next phase, which is the jury trial. What evidence was presented to the jury? How was the case argued by the prosecution, by the defense? Then finally we talk about the conclusion of the case, as well as what happened to all the individuals in it, the witnesses, the victims, the attorneys maybe. So it's very different as far as an approach. We take it from the beginning to the end and all the details in between. I think you're going to find it fascinating, so hopefully you'll join us. So subscribe, and we generally have a new podcast every Friday at 3 o'clock. To make sure, if you subscribe, you'll know for certain when the next podcast comes up. Over the years, there have been many mysterious deaths of actors and actresses in Hollywood that have never been solved. And we're going to take one of them today and to see if you can solve it. It's fascinating, and maybe you'll have the answer. So let's get started. Let's review the facts. Well, what is our case today? The mysterious death of Thelma Todd. If murder, who did it? Well, can you solve this case? Well, it's gone on for what, over 75 years. And what happened to Thelma Todd? How did she die? Well, who was she? Well, she was an actress, did a lot of movies between 1920 and 1935. Very attractive, very talented. It was the talkie movies that started, and she was kind of at the beginning of that. Her moniker, I guess, would be the ice cream blonde. Her hair was platinum blonde, and she did a number of movies with the Marx Brothers. They were comedies, and she was very, very funny and got well known for that. And then she went on to do a number of comedies with Laurel and Hardy. And she did the first talkie movie for Hal Roach Studio. One was The Unaccustomed as We Are, and then there was another one, The Devil's Brother. Many Laurel and Hardy comedies that she did. And the one that is always funny is Another Fine Mess. Very funny in that one. And here, there's a picture of the three of them, Stanley and Laurel and Thelma. What a team. It was funny team. Now, we're going to talk about one movie in particular, and it's called The Bohemian Girl. She was working on that. That was the movie that she was working on at the time of her death. And the photograph on the right-hand side is a photo of one of the last scenes that she did. And she had, maybe a week of close-up shots that they needed to do. So, on Monday, December the 16th, 1935, she was to go to the studios, and her assistant, her name was May, went to get her car. Her car was parked up on a hill, some distance away from her restaurant, and maybe it was 10 o'clock or 10:30. Her assistant went up there, and this is the garage. Where that circle is where her car was parked. So the assistant goes there up to the garage, and it's unlocked. She opens the garage, and there it is. That is her Lincoln convertible. The assistant goes in there, the keys are in it, and she walks in, and what does she find? There's Thelma Todd lying over on the side, and did she fall asleep? I mean, the assistant can't figure out what is going on, so she goes around to look at her and sees that Thelma has on a blue dress the dress that she had had on Saturday, and she had a fur coat, and all of her jewelry was there. Obviously, that wasn't a robbery situation. So the coroner's investigators come out, they take her body away, and they do an autopsy. And the autopsy revealed that her death was an acute carbon monoxide poisoning. Accidental time of death was 36 hours before the discovery, meaning before the Monday, when she was discovered at 10:30. Now, the theory of her death is based on the fact that it was very cold that night, and maybe she wanted to get warm. She was locked out of her apartment. She couldn't get in, but she knew that her garage was up the hill and her car was parked there. So she most likely went up to her garage, started her car, the heater from the car got her warm. She fell asleep, and she inhaled the carbon monoxide as it built up in that closed garage. That was what caused the asphyxiation. So this is the theory of what caused her death. However, it doesn't all add up, and that's why so many questions. Nobody looked for her on Sunday. Why wouldn't somebody have looked for her and thought, wait, where is she? Why didn't they check out the garage? The other thing that was mysterious is on her face was blood. Some people say quite a bit of blood. It was smeared all over. And she's missing a tooth. A tooth has been knocked out. And when they examined her during the autopsy, she has broken ribs. And she has a number of bruises on her. For asphyxiation, that doesn't add up. So, an investigation is conducted of Thelma Todd's death by LAPD. You have to know all your parties to the case. So we're going to talk about Roland West and Jewel CARMEN. They were a married couple. He was a director and she was an actress, but she mainly did the old silent movies. It was very, very popular. And the two of them built this house on top of the hill here, overlooking the Pacific and Pacific Palisades. Her last big movie was The Lawless Love. So that was the couple that was married, and then they divorced. Now we're going to talk about how does Thelma Todd get to know Roland West. Well, they did a movie together, Corsair. He was the director and she was the leading lady in it. So they had an opportunity to get to know each other and work together. So that is the connection between the two of them. So as time went on, after Roland and Jewel divorced, Roland came down and moved in with Thelma in the restaurant that she had. She had bought a restaurant, whether it was 1931 or 32. She had it operating by 32, and it was called Thelma's Sidewalk Café. And there it was. And she did have a manager, husband and wife, that ran it, but she spent a lot of time there herself. Now, she's quite an actress, but, you know, you would see her there at the restaurant, at the bar. And just to give you a flavor for what was the restaurant like, very nice. And you can see the bar in the background. Beautiful, beautiful, large layout. A very popular place. Now, why was it? Well, it had a great location. You couldn't have a better location. It was some distance from Hollywood and Beverly Hills, but not too far of a drive to get to Pacific Palisades along the beach there. Now, there were certain advantages of being out of the city area. You didn't have to worry about law enforcement. The vice cops aren't going to be hanging around at the beach like they might be in Hollywood. Now, this is a time of prohibition between 1920 and 1933. And, you know, she starts the restaurant about 31, 32. So she is, you know, has a bar there during Prohibition. So she had to kind of keep it quiet to some extent, but people knew about it and they would drive out to it. Now, as far as the location, it was on what we call Pacific Coast Highway, PCH. Originally, it was called the Roosevelt Highway. It was an area that stretched from basically Laguna Beach, Newport Beach, and went all the way up to Ventura, Oxnard area. So this was a very popular route that people took. And the thing about this bridge area where Thelma's restaurant was the last stop of the bus. If you took a bus from Los Angeles or Santa Monica, the last stop up the beach area was here. So a lot of people came up, got off, and crossed over. Now, the Hollywood crowd loved this place, and tourists came from far and wide to be seen there, to see what it was like. Very fashionable. The building was built in 1928, more of a Moorish structure, and it was office buildings for a kind of a subdivision of homes right behind, up on the hillside. So when they were finished with it, she bought it and put in her restaurant. Now, as far as the living arrangements, to make it clear, the Thelma and Roland lived above on the second floor on the right-hand side. You can see where their apartment was. Now, his original home with his wife was way up higher, and you can see it in the background there. So that gives you kind of a flavor for it. And just to know how far, here you can see what did the restaurant look like at nighttime, besides the restaurant for dining and drinking. Oh, there was some gambling that was taking place upstairs. Now, it was in this area that I've circled here. On the top level was like a casino. And I took these pictures here. This was the speakeasy door. You had to go through this because, they didn't want people, the law enforcement, to come in there. So you had to give the right name at the little window there, and then they would allow you to go up. And the casino area was on top. You can see what it looked like. It had a beautiful view of the Pacific Ocean from that site. So this is during Prohibition time, and as Prohibition ends, illegal gambling still is not permitted. So this is where the casino is on top. Everything changed after Prohibition. The mob had to find another way of making money. Obviously, liquor isn't going to do it. So they get into the gambling business, and in the Los Angeles area, they got these boats, large ships, and they would go out 3 miles, and they could gamble. So a lot of people would get on the boats at Santa Monica and Long Beach, and they would go out and have a fun night gambling. But Luciano wanted something on land, and he knew about Thelma's casino on top, so he wanted to buy it, and he made her an offer. He indicated, I want to buy your Café, your casino, just give me a price. Her response was kind of interesting to the head of the mob. She said, you'll get the Café over my dead body. I don't know if I'd say that to the head of the mob. His response was, that can be arranged. Well, was that a threat? Well, who knows? Now, we direct our attention to a party that she went to. It's on December the 14th, 1935, the Trocadero restaurant. Very interesting hangout. And she went there with her chauffeur. Her chauffeur drove her there. And when she got in there, she saw that her ex-husband was there. She stayed there. She drank quite a bit. And she most likely had more than she should have. And it wasn't until later on her chauffeur drove her home. So drove her back to her restaurant. So that is what happened at that restaurant. When she got to her place, Thelma's Café, her chauffeur stopped there in front, and she got out and she went to the front door. Now it most likely is around maybe 3:15, and then her chauffeur then proceeds to go up the hill to park the car in the garage. So Thelma then goes up to the front door there, you can see, and she's banging on the door. It's locked. Roland has locked it. He had warned her, if you're not home by 2 o'clock, I'm going to lock this place up and you're not going to get in. And, well, it's late after that time, and she's yelling, and she's throwing rocks at the windows, trying to get his attention to open it, and he won't open it. And she's drunk, she's cold, and she's mad. So what is she going to do? She's there and doesn't know what to do. Well, the question is, did she go up to her car that was parked in the garage? Well, it would be very difficult to get there because it's a long ways up the stairs. She would have to climb all these stairs. And just to give you a layout, this is to show you how far it would be from the restaurant to the garage. Go all these stairs, make a right-hand turn along this long roadway, and there's the garage. All right, so it would take you a long time, and it would be quite some effort to get there. And whose garage is it? Well, it's Jewel Carmen's garage, and even though she's the ex-wife of Roland, you know, she's given permission to Thelma to park the car in her old garage because she's not using it. Now, the problem with the time of death is that the coroner says that, you know, the time of death is sometime between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m., and the body isn't found until Monday at 10:30. The other thing that the coroner comes up with is she has peas and carrots in her stomach at the time of the autopsy. There were no peas and carrots served at that restaurant that night. Oh, where did that come from? Could she have eaten it later? And the other thing is rigor mortis was on her body. How could that set in? It only sets in, you know, after the 5 hours. So, just to clarify and giving this calendar, this is the 14th when she arrived at the restaurant. Most likely was around 9 o'clock in the evening time. She leaves there and goes back to her place, most likely between 2 o'clock, gets there maybe at 3 o'clock. And her body isn't found until 10:30 on Monday. So now what happened to her all day Sunday and Monday morning? Well, we know the coroner says she had to have died sometime between 3 and 6 o'clock on Sunday. And we know rigor mortis, if it is on her body, would have occurred 5 hours before. None of this is adding up. On top of that is Jewel Carmen. She claims that she saw Thelma driving with a man on Sunday in Hollywood. And there were several friends that indicated they talked to Thelma on Sunday. So she was alive on Sunday. The other thing is that the person who lived above the garage there, it was the groundskeeper, he said, I didn't hear any engine of any car on Sunday morning. I didn't hear anything at all. I didn't even smell any exhaust. There was nothing. The asphyxiation theory doesn't seem to be holding up very well. So, how did Thelma Todd die? Was it an accident? Was it a suicide? Well, there isn't much in the way of any evidence as to that. But what about murder? Who would want to murder her? Well, we know that Roland was, he was upset at her for staying out late. She was doing a lot of partying, drinking. He didn't like that. And he didn't look for her all day Sunday. The other thing, Lucky Luciano, we know that he wanted to buy the Café, and she refused. Could it have been him? What about Bugsy Siegel? Now, Bugsy Siegel was being investigated by the DA, and he didn't want anybody talking to the DA. Let's just follow up on that about Bugsy Siegel. What we do know is Thelma Todd had contacted the district attorney, and she was complaining that the mob was trying to take over her restaurant. And what we do know about this is an author, Wolf, wrote in a book, and that was his theory about Bugsy. And he claims that Bugsy was at the restaurant, and people saw him there. And he was in the back room. He had somebody bring Thelma to that back room, and then he talked to her, and he said, look, I don't want you going to the DA, saying anything to the DA about us trying to buy your casino. Now, apparently there was quite an argument between Thelma and Bugsy. People heard them yelling at each other. The other on the theory about the author by Wolf, he claims that Bugsy Siegel had his men follow her home. And when she got out of her Lincoln and the chauffeur took off and went up the hill to park it, they approached her and they argued with her and said, hey, listen to Bugsy. And there was a big confrontation in the parking lot there, and they hit her. And she fell back, hit her head. Maybe they worked her over. We don't know exactly what happened, but somehow they decided, and after she had died, to take her body up and place it in the car, her car in that garage at the top of the hill. Well, okay, it's an interesting theory. Does all the facts add up to that? Well, maybe, maybe not. What we do know is Thelma's death will always be a mystery. We never have enough facts, and we don't get the right people giving us the right information. Her funeral was the largest funeral in Hollywood, except for Rudolph Valentino. Thousands and thousands of people came to her funeral. It was interesting. She only was 29 years old when she died. Amazing how much she had accomplished in such a short period of time. All that remains, there was a movie that was made of her, the White Hot. That was Thelma Todd's life. Her star of fame is still on the Hollywood sidewalk, and there is her tombstone. That Thelma Todd died in 1935. That is all that remains of Thelma Todd. Now, I just want to bring you up to date. What does it look like out there today? I took these photographs. What happened? There was a landslide behind the restaurant casino, and the streets were, covered over. And you can see there's the roadway there is completely blocked there. You can see there's where the garage is. That building is still there, Carmen's old house. And there's my wife standing in front of the garage, and I'm pointing at the garage. And this is, what does the building look like? Thelma Todd's Sidewalk Cafe. There's the building still standing. And I was able to get inside and take these pictures of an interesting place. You think of all the history that took place in these rooms. Fascinating, fascinating. And this is Thelma Todd's, where she lived, and that would have been her kitchen area right there. It looks out on the Pacific Ocean. Beautiful view just above her restaurant there. Magnificent. And the doors. just think of what happened behind those closed doors. Still there today. There it is. The building still stands. That's the address of the building. It still remains, but the mystery goes on. Will it ever be solved? Most likely not. Well, hopefully you found this Thelma Todd mysterious death case interesting. And if you have, I wrote a book called Celebrity Curse about other deaths of famous people in Hollywood. So if you want more information, get my book. Well, we hope you join us again on True Crime Files of Los Angeles when we'll talk about another case. See you then.